If you follow every step of Manchester City as if you were part of the team, then brace yourself. The latest moves at the Etihad indicate that we are about to witness a true revolution in the squad. After dominant seasons in the Premier League, the current campaign hasn't exactly been what fans are used to seeing. Although the team is still fighting near the top of the table, their performance has fallen short of what's expected from a squad led by Pep Guardiola. And when things don't go as planned, the management takes action. And they take strong action. For those who thought City's cycle of success was on the decline, the response from the management was clear. Open the coffers and aim high in the transfer market. And we're not talking about average players or gambles, we're talking about big names who are already shining on the biggest stages of Europe. One of these targets is none other than Jude Bellingham. The English midfielder, currently at Real Madrid, is one of the biggest sensations in world football. And according to Spanish media, Manchester City has placed no less than $128 million on the table in an attempt to convince the Madrid team to release their star. Guardiola has never hidden his admiration for Bellingham. Since the young player started standing out, the Catalan coach has praised his versatility, his intelligence on the field, and his decision-making ability. This season, Bellingham has already scored 13 goals and provided 13 assists in 46 matches, a performance that only strengthens City's desire to count on his talent in midfield. And to make fans even more excited or anxious, Bellingham's bid didn't come alone. City is also reported to have made a parallel offer of $43 million for Eduardo Camavinga, another young talent at Real Madrid who has been growing under Ancelotti's guidance. The plan is clear. Renew the midfield with younger, energetic players. After all, the main current figures in the sector, such as Kevin De Bruyne, Ilkay Gundogan, and even Bernardo Silva, are already in their 30s or approaching that mark. The intention is to build a new core that can sustain the club's style of play for the years to come. However, not everything is rosy for the Citizens fans. According to sources close to Real Madrid, both players, Bellingham and Camavinga, are quite happy with life in Madrid. Additionally, President Florentino Perez doesn't seem willing to open negotiations anytime soon. Even so, those who know Guardiola understand. When he prioritizes a name, he insists until the end. And if it depends on the manager's will, Manchester City will fight with all their might to bring at least one of the two stars. Meanwhile, in goal, another important story is unfolding. Ederson, the goalkeeper who has been essential in nearly every title the club has won in recent years, may be saying goodbye to the Etihad. Speculation about his departure has resurfaced strongly behind the scenes of European football. Last year, he had already attracted the interest of clubs from Saudi Arabia, and now the talks seem to have advanced. According to journalist Santi Una, Al-Ittihad, which competes in the Saudi Pro League, has taken the lead in negotiations to sign the Brazilian goalkeeper. Ederson is said to have received an enticing offer, similar to the one previously made by Al Nassr, with astronomical salaries and a 2-year contract. The most curious part is that, at the moment, Ederson is sidelined due to an injury sustained against Crystal Palace. And some are saying that might have been his last match in the sky blue shirt. If the goalkeeper's departure goes ahead, City already has a favorite to replace him, Diogo Costa, currently at Porto. At 25, the Portuguese keeper has caught attention not only for his difficult saves, but also for his ability to play with his feet, something essential in Guardiola's style of play. Sources indicate that Costa is willing to pack his bags and head to Manchester, and that his agent, Jorge Mendes, is already in talks to lower the transfer fee, which could be around $34 million. Hugo Vanna, one of the key figures in the club's management, is said to have declared that Costa is the plan A for the position. And this move doesn't happen in isolation. The truth is that Manchester City is preparing for a major overhaul. After years of success, the management and coaching staff believe the time has come to start a new cycle, perhaps even more ambitious than the previous one. This includes key departures and investments in emerging talents. One of the most talked about names behind the scenes is Jeremy Doku. The young Belgian, who arrived at City with great expectations, has received glowing praise from Guardiola, who described him as exceptional after impressive performances against Everton and Aston Villa. But, to the surprise of many, rumors indicate that Doku is considering a move to Spanish football. The information came from the KS1 TV channel, where Steve K reported that the player hasn't fully adapted to life in Manchester. And as if that wasn't enough, K also mentioned the possibility of departures from other important names, such as De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, and Mateo Kovacic. It seems that Guardiola is ready to pass the torch to a new generation, and is unafraid to make tough decisions. In fact, there are reports that the Spanish manager has already spoken directly with Rodrigo's father, the Real Madrid forward, to discuss a potential transfer. The idea would be to offer him a prominent role on the left side of the attack, which could seal Doku's fate if the Brazilian accepts the proposal. This move, if realized, would be another piece in the puzzle of this new version of Manchester City that is being put together. But perhaps no departure weighs as much as Kevin De Bruyne's. In early April, the Belgian officially announced his departure from the club, and the most shocking part wasn't the content of the announcement, but rather the fact that the decision came from Manchester City itself. De Bruyne, who is a living legend of the club, revealed that even he didn't expect this twist. After almost 10 years delighting fans with pinpoint passes, decisive goals, and memorable performances, the news hit fans like a bombshell. Even influential figures in football, such as Thierry Henry, publicly expressed their disappointment with how the club handled the idol. However, there is another side to this story, and it has to do with numbers. De Bruyne is currently the second highest paid player in the Premier League, earning $400,000 per week. Despite still showing great quality on the pitch, his numbers this season, 10 goal contributions in 24 matches, have raised doubts about the viability of maintaining such a high cost. Moreover, with the new financial rules of the Premier League requiring a balance between spending and revenue, City needs to free up space on the wage bill to make the desired signing. De Bruyne's departure, along with the wages of other players such as Bernardo Silva, John Stones, and Jack Grealish, could represent savings of up to $1.25 million per week, enough money to bring in new talents, such as Florian Wirtz, valued at around $100 million. This is Manchester City entering a new phase, with major decisions being made behind the scenes. And as always, the fans are torn between the emotion of saying goodbye to idols and the excitement of the new faces that may emerge. It's the natural cycle of a club that wants to remain at the top, constantly reinventing itself. With all this at stake, it becomes increasingly clear that Manchester City is not just reacting to a below-par season, it is anticipating the future. Kevin De Bruyne's departure, as painful as it may be, could mark a milestone in this transition. It is the end of a glorious chapter, yes, but also the beginning of a new cycle that promises to be as successful as the previous one. There's no denying that the club's decision has been controversial. Many fans felt that De Bruyne deserved a more fitting conclusion, perhaps finishing his career with City's shirt, surrounded by tributes, applause, and a stadium full of standing ovations. But modern football, increasingly shaped by financial rules and the need for constant renewal, doesn't always allow for such romantic endings. The management seems convinced that, to continue competing at the highest level, it's necessary to think coldly and act with objectivity. And in this process, it's not only on-field talent that matters, but also the financial impact of each player. At a club aiming to heavily invest in names like Wirtz, Bellingham, Camavinga, and even Rodrigo, every penny saved on wages becomes ammunition for new signings. By the way, it's worth noting that the name of Florian Wirtz didn't come up by chance. The Bayer Leverkusen midfielder has been dazzling Europe with his creativity and passing precision. At 20, he already displays an absurd level of maturity on the field, which is why Manchester City is willing to fork out around $100 million to secure his talent. He would, in Guardiola's view, be an ideal piece to begin the midfield renewal, especially with the imminent departures of names like De Bruyne, Bernardo, and Kovacic. This transformation is not limited to the midfield. In attack, the possible arrival of Rodrigo could profoundly impact the team's offensive structure. The Brazilian, despite his youth, has already proven decisive in big matches, and according to insider information, Guardiola has offered him a permanent spot on the left wing, a move that, if realized, could signal the end of the road for Jeremy Doku at the Etihad. Doku's case is emblematic. Signed with high expectations, he did show flashes of brilliance, even being publicly praised by Guardiola. However, the adaptation to the city of Manchester seems to have been challenging. Sources close to the player suggest that he might be inclined to seek new opportunities in Spain, where he believes he could fit better both on and off the field. And in a club that values both collective success and the well-being of its athletes, such personal decisions also carry weight. But what about the goalkeeper position? With Ederson's likely departure becoming more probable, the pressure to secure Diogo Costa increases. The Portuguese keeper, aside from being technically very competent, has the ideal profile to develop further under Guardiola's tutelage. His playing style with his feet, game vision, and quick reflexes position him as one of the top goalkeepers of the new generation. And the fact that he is already willing to move to Manchester makes everything even more favorable. In this context, the figure of Hugo Vanna stands out. As one of the most influential voices in the club's sporting planning, he has been directly involved in negotiations and has shown firmness in placing names like Diogo Costa at the top of the priority list. He is also the one leading talks with Jorge Mendes, one of the most powerful agents in football, in an attempt to align Porto's interests with those of City. These behind-the-scenes moves show that the club is far beyond improvisation. Everything follows a carefully structured plan, with goals, priorities, and concrete actions. From talks with player representatives to the release of funds for signings, every step is designed to keep City among the best in the world for many years. It is interesting to observe how Guardiola remains at the center of it all, not just as a manager, but as a sort of architect of this new era. His conversations with players, his influence on signings, and his ability to visualize the future of the squad make him a key figure in the rebuilding process. Even with the natural wear and tear of so many years at the helm of the same team, Pep seems more involved than ever. He knows that keeping a team at the top is even harder than getting there. And to do so, he is willing to make unpopular decisions, sever ties with idols, and bet on names that have yet to prove themselves in the Premier League. Is it risky? Of course. But if there's anyone capable of guiding this type of transition with mastery, that person is Guardiola. We cannot overlook the role of the young talents already part of the squad. Kike, Oscar Bob, Claudio Echeverri, and other names who are gradually gaining space. This new generation could be the very link between what Manchester City has been so far and what it intends to be in the future. With the right amount of maturation, they could become protagonists under Pep's watchful eye. The blend of impactful signings and internal development of young players is exactly what sets apart clubs that simply spend money from those that build dynasties. And this is exactly what Manchester City is trying to do now, start a new dynasty. With less reliance on established names and a stronger focus on building a long-term project. In this scenario, every departure takes on new meaning. De Bruyne's departure, for instance, is not just the farewell of a star, but also the liberation of valuable space in the wage bill. Ederson's departure, more than a goalkeeper swap, represents a shift in mentality in defense. And Doku's departure, if confirmed, would make room for a more established profile, like Rodrigo, or even for a young player from the academy, if that becomes the final decision. With every move behind the scenes at Manchester City, it becomes increasingly clear that the club is not just reacting to a season below expectations. It is, in fact, preparing for a new cycle of success, adapting to the increasingly competitive landscape of the Premier League and European football. And while the team is already starting to transform with the arrival of new faces and the departure of others, it's impossible not to wonder, what lies ahead for City? One of the biggest challenges faced by the management and Guardiola will be integrating the new signings into the playing system required at the Etihad. We know that Pep is a master at creating cohesive teams, where collective effort often outweighs individual talent. But in modern football, this cohesion needs players who can adapt quickly, and that doesn't always happen. Therefore, the signings of players like Wirtz and Camavinga aren't just about quality, but about fitting these pieces into the unique style of play that Guardiola demands. However, it's worth remembering that despite the pressure that comes with player turnover, City has a solid foundation that can still sustain the competitiveness of the team. Players like Haaland, Grealish, and Stones are key pillars who, alongside younger talents like Doku, could represent a new beginning for the team, with a balance between experience and youth. The issue of the attack, in fact, is something that has been frequently discussed. Keeping Haaland as the starting center forward, a player who has already proven to be almost unbeatable in terms of numbers, is a major asset for City. The possible arrival of Rodrigo or even the continued presence of Doku in the team brings different options for the attacking sector. The flexibility of options, with players capable of playing in various roles, only broadens the range of possibilities for the team. But of course, the big unknown remains the role of Pep Guardiola. The coach, despite being adored by many and respected by others, also faces constant criticism, especially in times of pressure. His insistence on a highly offensive style of play based on ball possession can be seen as an asset in many situations, but it also leaves City vulnerable at times. And it's here that the decisions made in the upcoming transfer windows, especially those concerning the midfield and defense, could define the direction the team will take. Guardiola, despite being the strategist behind City's success, knows that his work is never static. He is always seeking evolution, a way to improve his team and his own tactical system. The fact that the coach is looking for a younger, more dynamic midfield is a clear indication that he is adapting to the new demands of football, an increasingly fast, physical, and unpredictable game. By seeking young talents like Bellingham, Camavinga, and Wirtz, Guardiola demonstrates not only his intention to renew the team, but also to prepare for a new phase of dominance, where ball possession and high pressing will remain City's trademarks, but with even greater intensity. This is not just about replacing players, but about creating a team that can dominate the game for even longer, with even more control. And of course, future signings also need to be analyzed within the club's financial context. With players like De Bruyne leaving, City gains flexibility to make these heavy investments. The financial pressure on Premier League clubs is rising, with financial fair play and sustainability rules in place. Therefore, every move in the market needs to be carefully planned, both in terms of cost and fitting within the team. With the future of the club at stake, the pressure on Hugo Vanna, the director of football, increases every day. He is responsible for ensuring that City remains competitive, even with all these changes, negotiating for new players, managing financial resources, and discussing player contract renewals are just some of his tasks. He must ensure that City not only survives these changes, but comes out stronger and more prepared for what's to come. The coming months will be crucial for Manchester City's future. With every transfer, with every adjustment, the club will be shaping itself for the upcoming season. The departure of icons like De Bruyne and Ederson, if realized, will open a new chapter in City's history. And this new chapter is likely to be marked by a deep renewal, both in the squad and the club's ambitions. What can we expect? A younger, more agile Manchester City, and undoubtedly one more determined to continue its victorious trajectory. For the fans, this is a time of uncertainty, but also of great expectation. What once seemed like an unbeatable team is preparing for new challenges, and the promise of a new cycle is beginning to take shape on the horizon. Now, it's time for Manchester City to reconfigure its identity, blending the legacy of great players with the hope for an even more promising future. For Pep Guardiola, the work is just beginning. And so, Manchester City moves forward in a time of great transformation, with new plans for the season and a reshaping that could bring many surprises. Fans have much to look forward to, and the changes in the squad promise a new phase for the club. Will these decisions be the right ones? Time will tell. If you're as excited as we are to see how it all unfolds, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll stay up to date with all the latest news about Manchester City and much more. Don't miss any updates on the team's future and the transfer market movements. See you in the next video.